Just an incredible speech by Barack Obama the other day at a citizenship ceremony for new Americans. It was his response to the national conversation sparked by Donald Trump about Muslim migrants and Trump's proposal to have a pause until the problem with Muslim radicals can be properly addressed. Obama was having none of that. He started off by saying how valuable immigrants have been to America in the past, and that's true as far as it goes.
We can never say it often or loudly enough. Immigrants and refugees revitalize and renew America.
There's truth to that, though some immigrants and refugees do better than others, but it's true. Here's more in that vein.
Immigrants are the teachers who inspire our children, and they're the doctors who keep us healthy. They're the engineers who design our skylines, and the artists and the entertainers who touch our hearts.
Okay, but no one is saying America should not have any immigrants. No one is even saying America should not have Muslim immigrants. Trump said that Muslim immigration should be paused until the jihadist threat is better addressed, to screen out people coming to kill Americans. I don't think most Americans or Canadians are opposed to immigration as an ideal or even as a historical experience. We're concerned with what is being done now in the name of immigration. In the U.S., that's particularly acute on two issues: illegal immigration from Mexico, including criminal migration and Mexican drug gangs, and recently, especially since the San Bernardino terrorist attack, Muslim immigration that doesn't screen out radicals. Obama only used the word Muslim once in his whole address, and he didn't mention terrorism at all. Look, I get it. It's a speech to welcome new immigrants, but instead of exhorting Muslims and all other immigrants to abandon any illiberal medieval ideas like, say, Sharia law, and adopt Western ideals of the equality of men and women and the separation of mosque and state, the only mention Obama made about Muslims was shaking his finger at old stock Americans for being so bigoted.
We must resolve to always speak out against hatred and bigotry in all of its forms, whether taunts against the child of an immigrant farm worker or threats against a Muslim shopkeeper.
What threats against which Muslim shopkeeper? Why would he talk about an apocryphal hypothetical like that instead of the very real, very deadly result of the San Bernardino terrorists? Why is he teaching new immigrants? That's who he was speaking to. Why is he teaching new immigrants that Americans are bigoted by nature and he needs to give Americans a stern lecture? How does that even make sense? I mean, a black president talking to new immigrants, how does it even make sense to imply that America is possibly a racist country in its nature? But that was the heart of Obama's speech, actually. Here, let me prove it to you. Instead of exhorting new immigrants to be liberal and Western and embrace American values and abandon old grievances, he chose to condemn America itself as historically racist, bigoted, and mean. Here, listen.
From the start, Africans were brought here in chains against their will and then toiled under the whip.
Well, yes, that's true. Every continent in the world has had a history of slavery, including pre-Columbus America, including Europe, Asia, of course, Africa itself. But America fought a civil war in part over slavery and abolished slavery and has had blacks in every high office in the land. Why tell about the shame and not about the redemption? Why emphasize a negative chapter that has been remediated, other than to denigrate and deride and teach new immigrants to nurse old grievances and think of themselves as victims? By the way, Obama himself was not descended from slaves. His father was Kenyan. He himself can't claim any historical grievance. He's merely adopted it, appropriated it as a political trick. But here's more. Here, I want to play for you a whole minute of Obama welcoming newcomers to America by condemning America in a rant that could have been written by Bill Ayers himself.
A century ago, New York City shops displayed those signs: "No Irish need apply." Catholics were targeted, their loyalty questioned. So much so that as recently as the 1950s and 60s, when JFK had to run, he had to convince people that his allegiance wasn't primarily to the Pope. Chinese immigrants faced persecution and vicious stereotypes and were for a time even banned from entering America. During World War II, German and Italian residents were detained, and in one of the darkest chapters in our history, Japanese immigrants and even Japanese American citizens were forced from their homes and imprisoned in camps. We succumbed to fear. We betrayed not only our fellow Americans, but our deepest values. We betrayed these documents. It's happened before.
This is a president welcoming new Americans in 2015. His message is clear. You are coming to a country of bigotry. In case you feel like Americans, you're not really. You're radicalized, racialized, as the leftist phrase goes. You can never be part of the center, so be a perpetual anti-American derider like Obama is. Now, by the way, there was a huge wave of Jewish immigration to America about 100 years ago. They weren't really refugees, they were just immigrants, though they were fleeing inhospitable places like Tsarist Russia. Some of America's greatest patriots came from that wave, including my all-time favorite exemplar of what a great immigrant should be like, the late Irving Berlin. He was a Russian Jew who came to America and loved it so much he spent his whole life writing patriotic songs. He wrote God Bless America. He wrote White Christmas, even though he was a Jew. He loved America. He wanted to be more American than Americans. Obviously had commercial hits too, like Putting on the Ritz, dozens of others. But when World War II came, he wrote a musical play and traveled the world entertaining American troops. That's the perfect immigrant in my mind. But there is only one mention of Jews in all of Obama's talk.
In the Syrian seeking refuge today, we should see the Jewish refugee of World War II.
Really? Really? So Muslims today are like the Jews of the Second World War, are they? By the way, under a Democrat president named Franklin Roosevelt, America closed its doors to Jewish refugees in the Second World War, just like Canada did under a liberal prime minister named Mackenzie King. But that's the one historical injustice that Obama left out of his condemnation of America, wasn't it? But stop for a moment. Are today's Muslims really the new Jews? Are Muslims being exterminated by the million around the world? Is there a modern Adolf Hitler saying he will kill every Muslim and doing it? And if today's Muslims are like the Jews of the Holocaust, were the Jews back then, were they killing people in the name of their Jewish Bible? Were there Jewish suicide bombers? Were there Jewish terrorist attacks on the West? Did Jews come to America and demand that Jewish religious law supersede American law? No. Muslims aren't the new Jews. Jews are the new Jews. Jews are being attacked around the world, whether it's the Jewish supermarket in Paris or the ongoing terrorist attacks against Jews in Israel. Jews are the new Jews, Obama. There were elements of Obama's speech that were just fine. A boilerplate welcome to America, lines usually delivered by some low-level bureaucrat at a ceremony like this. This was a special speech Obama chose to give to rebut concerns about violent immigration that's not coming to be American, but to conquer America. Obama didn't have a word against that violent immigration. He saved his venom for Americans themselves, lecturing them as bigoted Islamophobes and racists. And he kept his most vicious barb, as usual, for the Jews.